Radha Damodara ki jai, Shri Yashoda Damodara ki jai, Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Shri Panchatattva ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I am so sorry for torturing you. Just that I don't practice. I didn't sing this with Karatalas in 5 years, 6 years. I'm living in an apartment building there, you know, you clap, no more. Quiet, clap. Quiet.
Случайно тиснули jutri snimali dol na ne. Случайno nisem mogoče kako
Mogu je to, mir povedal.
Verjetno, ja.
Mislim, da je vročen.
Govori on nikoli, mislim, da je.
Mene vpraša, kje so gasne.
Se piše gor.
Prabhupada, shall we just start? There's enough to say until tomorrow. Okay. We can sing Charada Madhava, why not? No, I can just... Jai Rama Rama Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Rama Rama Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Rama Rama Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Rama Rama Jaya Kunja Bihari Kupijana Valava Jaya Giri Varada Gopijana Vallabha Girivarare Jaya Guru Murare Yashodanandana Jaya Vratajaranjana Jaya Vrachajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Jaya Vratajaranjana Jaya Vrachajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tira Jaya Kunjabi Hare Jaya Rama Rama Jaya Kunjabi Hare Jaya Rama Rama Jaya Kunjabi Hare Jaya Rama Rama Kunja Bihari Jaya Rama Rama Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Rama Rama Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Rama Rama Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Om Vishnu Paramahamsa Parivrakacharya Astuttara Sata Shri Srimat His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Rastakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giridhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktarinda Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktarinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, I was asked maybe that instead of the regular Bhagavad Gita class, as it is customary in the evening, here, so we could already start with the glorification and celebration of Srila Prabhupada's personality. As we know, tomorrow is Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day. So, I could also read Bhagavad Gita and switch to Prabhupada very easily, because whatever we hear in Bhagavad Gita is from Krishna. But just imagine we would have Bhagavad Gita without the purpose of Srila Prabhupada. That we can safely say would be a highly misunderstood book. As a matter of fact, and we should never forget this, nobody of us will sit here today if Srila Prabhupada wouldn't get on that boat in a very advanced age, suffered 2 heart attacks on that boat, came down from a boat in a country he never was before, with practically not one single friend. Just picture yourself in that situation. You can skip the heart attacks. But just imagine tomorrow morning you wake up in a country where you never were before. You look outside of the window and Prabhupada was thinking, who painted the walls white? He never saw snow in his life. You know, snow, that's in India and Himalaya, you know, the Indians don't know snow. And then he looked at the people walking around. I mean, he couldn't understand. And Prabhupada said, 1 year I was walking around simply trying to understand, where am I? What are these people doing here? He never saw in India people using a vacuum cleaner. Prabhupada said, what is this? Refrigerator. It was those days in India very unknown. Therefore you have in India powdered milk. Fresh milk is immediately yogurt. It's plus 40 degrees. Where do you want to keep the milk? Things like that. And then all this meat eating and all that smoking and all that intoxication, and America was exactly upside down. Student revolts, war in a distant country, Vietnam. Young boys being just caught by the government and sent to Vietnam to die. You know, this America was upside down. There was black and white revolts. So Prabhupada was just walking around in these huge cities. He never saw a city like this. But Prabhupada said, later on, devotees were amazed how adaptable Prabhupada was and how fearless he was entering very strange environments, big cities, strange situations. Prabhupada said, I'm a Calcutta boy. I grew up in Calcutta. I'm trained. You know, Calcutta is a craziness on its own. Actually, that's for us again. When we come to Calcutta, we go like, what are they doing here? No rules in traffic, left, right, it doesn't matter. You drive where the space is. You know, swamps everywhere, you know. It's just like, I passed in a suburb of Calcutta, there's a lake which is every year some other color. Bright blue, bright brown, bright green. I was going, what kind of? And people live on it in cottages like this. Going, what is this? Yeah, that was the wastewater from the local factory which was coloring cloth or whatever. So whatever color they use, the leftover, they just spill it into the lake. Things like that, well, we don't see it in the West, much of this. There's other kind of pollution, but not this. People sleeping on a street just like that, you know. I mean, this is for us. So if you reverse the whole thing, that was America for Prabhupada. He studied the science, what are they writing? He never saw such a big advertisement, you know. Michelin tires. Prabhupada was going, Chintamani. He kind of connected these names to the names he knew. And then he saw this confused. Prabhupada had a choice. He started actually in an established yoga studio. Yoga, popular. Today also yoga, popular. Why? Well, it was a fat American ladies who want to lose weight. So you make yoga to lose weight, you know, postures. And Mr. Mishra is the first one who offered him some accommodation. He was making quite good money on that. Srila Prabhupada later said, I could become like that. For Indian circumstances, I would get good money. Rich, fat ladies, you know, making yoga. You know, and Prabhupada said, yeah, I could actually tune into this and become, you know, get some reasonable money together. Instead of that, Prabhupada kept on preaching from the first moment he entered America. Now, when he was first accommodated in Agarwal's home, that was really a very close family circumstance. You find beautiful photos as the little Agarwal first time start to walk with the help of Prabhupada. He got up and he started to walk the baby, and Prabhupada, there's a photo, Prabhupada going, And there Prabhupada learned, he was opening the refrigerator, he was going, what is this? He saw the vacuum cleaner, wow, what is this? He was studying just what kind of people, how they are living here. And even Agarwals were Indians, but still they were very Americanized. Still, it was amazing. Miss Agarwal later on remembering this time where Prabhupada was staying with them. There was no ISKCON, there were no disciples, there was nothing. And she said, that interview is very emotional. It's a lady, So she just remembering Prabhupada, she said, she used the word, he was oceanic. His smile and his, he was just amazing person. That was some realization she got. Srila Prabhupada was amazing person. He was not coming as a mystified yogi, surrounded by cloud of silence. Prabhupada shows in a lecture once like this, how he could be. He said, we are not even, Bhagavad Gita, Om is the manifestation of Krishna's impersonal aspect. But Prabhupada, even in that lecture, he's actually doing quite some mockery out of this. Because we are not sitting chanting, no. We are chanting Hare Krišna. Now to listen to the very first recorded lectures of Prabhupada, it's just amazing. They are not the standard ISKCON lectures he gave later on. Standard ISKCON lecture was 45 minutes. You know how we know that? Everything was recorded on tapes. Yeah? Analog tapes. And you could buy tapes 60 minutes or each side 45 minutes. And Prabhupada lecture fit exactly on the 45 side. He was very disciplined, he was very... but the first lectures, they didn't fit on any tape. They were very long. Ladies and gentlemen, Prabhupada's voice sounds different. It sounds really like very official. Ladies and gentlemen, And then he gives an amazing explanation, scholarly explanation on Bhagavad Gita, on Srimad Bhagavatam. Amazing. To a completely unqualified audience. Then, they talk even into his lecture. They still don't understand. When he speaks, I should shut up. And then it's a question and answers. No, they didn't do that. In the middle of the lecture, Swamiji, and Prabhupada stops very patiently and explains a little bit. The questions are hilarious. Swamiji, are you not alone? Because Prabhupada looks alone, a lonely old man, Prabhupada said, yes, I feel sometimes alone. I'm longing for my home, Vrindavan. Sometimes he said, I am longing for my headquarters in Vrindavan. The headquarters was just one room, Prabhupada kept that room. He actually paid rent ahead to preserve that room. Where he arrived few years later with his first crew of disciples coming to Vrindavan with him. They opened the room and there was dust everywhere, and there was all the papers what Prabhupada wrote. And unfortunately, Prabhupada gave a very unfortunate instruction. He said, this is all notes, paper, burn it. Brahmananda remembers, he said, and me, idiot, followed the instruction of the spiritual master and we burned it all. I mean, what could you find there? Something survived. Prabhupada's diary survived, his notes. He was very precise. He kept even treasury when he was sannyasi. Expense, income, 20 paisa income, 10 paisa expense, chapati flour. He kept exactly, was very organized. So Prabhupada found himself in this circumstance. We cannot imagine what that is. An old dying man in an age where people retire to Vrindavan hoping never to get out of there. To die in Vrindavan, that's return to God, it's almost guaranteed. No, Prabhupada left that shelter. He got on that boat and he came to this environment with books, 3 trunks of books, printed in India, not the Western quality. Our BBT manager, Brahma Muhurta, he had a copy of these books and he said, very daring publications. The printing, I don't want to go now in detail, but there was no computer, there was nothing of this, no printers. So Prabhupada brought from a typewriter typed manuscripts and they were set into plates with letters, each letter just... I saw it in India, still in function. There was boxes with this small letters, mirror-wise, set, and you set the whole line. And then you set next line. And when you have one page in original size, you tie it with a string so it doesn't move, and it's lying in that wooden box. And that wooden box, you roll color over it, and you turn it around and you print. And when you print, of course, then the line starts to move, And, when you see Prabhupada's first Bhagavatam, it's a little bit, the lines are a little bit like this, like that. It's printed on a solid paper. It's like packaging paper. And the binding of the books is like some shoemaker made it, solid. That was the only thing Prabhupada brought, these books. And he originally said, if nothing else would happen, and I would distribute these 3 trunks of books, I was thinking, well, at least something was done. I acted upon the instruction of my spiritual master, who said, wherever you get money, print books. And preach to English-speaking people. So I did that. But Prabhupada was, he said, after I distribute these books, I will go back again. But there was something, he was thinking, look at these young people, loitering around later on. There's one beautiful recording from a lecture where Prabhupada is urgently calling all the young people to stop to loiter around, confused, no aim in life, intoxicated, Prabhupada saw all this. So it was very, very sad, He felt really a compassion. So he said, I went even to the harbor checking where the next boat goes back again. I had a return ticket. So, but something was telling me, wait a little bit. Let's see, maybe something happens. So Prabhupada walked on a street. He moved from Agarwal's, he moved from the yoga studio. And Prabhupada said, with just little money from the sale of these books, he said, I rented an apartment, small room in a dirty place. The rent was actually cheap, but for Prabhupada this was lots of money. Prabhupada said, I didn't know how I will pay the rent. But I rented it, I had enough for 1 month. And then, I was still going with his books around, bookshops. He's a bookshop, he offered his books. He was on Sankirtan. Later on, that was a few years later, when already the first cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam got published, devotees came to a bookshop. And the lady looks at Srimad Bhagavatam. He said, I have these books already. There was 2 years ago, 2 years ago, there was an old Indian man here, you know. He was selling these books. Devotees were going, really? You have these books? Oh yeah, I couldn't sell it. I still have them somewhere. And then she described this old Indian man. He was amazing. He was such a gentleman. He was so amazing. And when she started to describe Prabhupada, she got completely in ecstasy. She said, and I mean, he was so gentle and he was so kind. And you know, and when I bought the books, he pulled a little metal box out. And he gave me a white sweet ball. Prabhupada was giving prasadam to it. And the lady was completely in ecstasy. So devotees were going, you still have these books? Oh yeah. Can we see them? So they immediately bought from her these books back. That was later. And then Prabhupada walked on a street, and then one of the first people he met was a boy walking on a street. He just wanted to go to India to look for a guru. It was very popular amongst the hippies. You go to India to smoke more hashish on the way, Afghanistan and all this. They walked. There was a hippie trail. Or hitchhike. And then maybe you will find some guru. You know. And gurus came even to New York on their own. Prabhupada was not the only one. You know, Prabhupada said, India has 2 articles to export. Rice and gurus. So, you know, so he was very critical to all this. And they were all cheating. They were just growing long beard and then going, and Western people have no idea, but they have money. So they were going for that. Prabhupada was not going for the money. Otherwise he would stay in the yoga club, you know, and he could become an established yoga teacher and make some money. No, he was attracted by the hippies. Like this young man who met on the street, he was like, and then he saw Prabhupada, and Prabhupada walking, that was an experience on his own. He didn't walk like normal Indians do. He was like floating, he was very majestic. So he was completely attracted. And he said, he crossed the street and he going, are you from India? Stupid question. And Prabhupada smiled and he was going, yes. And just by Prabhupada smiling was just, you were flooded. Prabhupada's eyes, it was like diamonds. They penetrated you. There's a whole poems devotees writing just about Prabhupada's eyes. When Prabhupada looked at you, he didn't look at you as the body. He looked at you as the soul. So he looked in you. He could look right away into your heart. One never experienced anything. You know, when we meet sometimes, you know, a little bit superficial, you know. We meet, you know, Haribol, even devotees, you know, Haribol, and then we move on. Our dealings are still very impersonal. But Prabhupada, he was the supreme personalist. So he just looked at this boy, and he was overpowered. He was, and he said, well, I was just thinking to go to India to find a guru. Prabhupada said, that's very nice. What are you doing? Very first question when you preach. What are you doing? That's what we ask people. He said, I am more like a writer. I'm also an editor. Prabhupada's eyes became big. He said, editor? Well, that's very nice. You see, if you could help me. And then he led him to his apartment, and there was piles of these manuscripts. Prabhupada was typing all the time, writing every day. So that was Hayagriva, the later on Hayagriva, who was the first, actually one of the first editors. I don't know further the details of that story, but first thing Prabhupada did, he engaged him immediately in editing books. Now I may say something controversial, which is not widely preached, But Srila Prabhupada didn't even come to start a movement. He didn't come to collect disciples. That was not on his agenda. He wanted to print his books. And then he said, but my Guru Maharaj told me that, but he didn't even tell me how to sell them, how to distribute them. He couldn't, because that depends on place, circumstances, and the country you are in. So Srila Prabhupada didn't know, but he was very determined. I have to print these books. So the first devotee who came helped me to edit. And of course, the word went immediately around hippies. There's a new guru here from India. And they immediately came to Prabhupada. Ah, new guru, wow. And they were all completely, Mukunda Maharaj describes, I visited few gurus before I saw Prabhupada. I was looking, So I came to a room. There's a new guru from India. Whoa. So it was a room full with people. And there was an altar, there was a curtain, and they gave me a sheet with some mantra on it, which I couldn't understand. It was long and complicated. So I was going, what is this? This is Sanskrit. And then I said, what is happening? Wait. Then the curtain went open. No, there was no altar, there was no deities, there was the guru. And he was sitting there, on some chair. And everybody started to chant that, that from the paper, this, And then, and then they chanted that, and then the curtain closed again. And Mukunda was going, that was it? And they said, yeah, you had the darshan. And what shall I do? You can give donation. There was a good donation box there in a corner, immediately. That was your spiritual experience. Mukunda was going, no, I will not go back to this. So when he heard there is another guru, he was going, the first question he asked his hippies, can I talk to him? And they said, of course, we are talking to him all the time. He was going, oh, that's interesting. So he entered, and there was a room like this. Prabhupada was sitting in a corner with this Indian metal trunk, this, which can serve like table. And he had his typewriter on it, and he was working on something, writing. So Mukunda was sitting there, and then there was some hippies sitting there, and they were already chanting. Some of them had some strange beads. They was all homemade, I remember these photos, the first hippies. They were doing their own japa beads, with this kind of beads, The 108 beads, it was like 1.5 meter long, that thing. And they were chanting there, Hare Rama, Rama. Everybody was chanting like some... He was going, wow, that's interesting. And then he looked at Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, he looked at him and smiled. He said, welcome. You have some questions? Yeah, well, who is you? And Mukunda said, Swamiji, I'm a musician. Prabhupada smiled even more and he said, that's wonderful. We make him music all the time. So you can come and make music with us. Simple preaching, And then Mukunda had to tell Prabhupada, I have an Indian instrument at home. It was like tambura. He had some tambura or sitar. I don't know. That was very, something. Indian instrument. Prabhupada smiled and he said, wonderful. Then you can bring your instrument here and play it with us and chant Hare Krišna with us. So he was going, okay, I will do that. So he was enthusiastic going to his little flat, and on the way he was thinking, the Swami said you can bring the instrument, but it sounded like he wanted me to donate the instrument. No, I will not donate my instrument to these people here, That's my tambura, And he had a big argument with himself. But Prabhupada never said that. But Prabhupada's appearance was very demanding. When he looked at you, you immediately felt compelled, like, I have to do something. I don't know, what shall I do now? You want me to do something? What shall I do? People got nervous, you know. They said, why are you looking at me like that? But Prabhupada didn't say anything. He was just smiling, looking at you like the same look. Why are you not serving Krishna? Huh? He didn't say anything. Everything was in that look. And people felt immediately affected. Oh, you mean serving? What? So of course Mukunda came with his instrument, and of course he donated the instrument. I had exactly the same experience in my life. I was an art student. I walked in a city of Karlsruhe in Germany, spaced out, dreaming, no money. And then out of the crowd emerged a little, well-fed young girl with sari kind of. She just came like from the crowd. And she was distributing records, you know, vinyl, you know, like that. And she just pushed the record in my stomach. And she was very firm. Hey, oh, wow, take one. No, I had no record player, I had nothing. But I was shocked. I mean, she was so determined. So she said, can you give a donation? And I was going, I immediately knew I have no money. Actually, I had a little purse. It was a funny purse. You open like this and you close like this. And there was 100 Deutschmarks, which were supposed to last for a whole month. It was not that much money, but that was my budget. And then there was some little coins, you know. So I was hiding this 100 Deutschmarks like this, and I emptied the purse in her hand. It was just very small coins. She looked at me and she was going, that's all what you have? And I lied to her. I was going, yes. Immediately I felt terrible. So she was like, okay. And then she took the LP away from me and gave me a Back to Godhead magazine, one of the first ones published in German. So I had this magazine, I was, oh, what is this? The first thing I was thinking, the layout and the graphical design was catastrophic. You know, it was more like collage. They cut out pictures and they just make photograph, you know. There was an article about Grihastha Ashram or whatever. I had no idea. I was just going through the magazine going, oh, that's pretty lousy design, you know. And the pictures were like pretty gross. So for me, an artist, you know, I was like, okay. But I felt so bad. I was going, why couldn't you give this 100 Deutschmarks, you idiot? You would survive somehow to borrow money or whatever. It was heavy. I couldn't sleep, you know. I was just like, but I knew this is the Hare Krishnas. They will come again. And then in 2 weeks, I had my birthday. My father gave me a Grundig tape recorder, this kind of small thing. This was very valuable for all the young people. You had no money, but tape recorder. That was, everybody must have a tape recorder. Because we lived on music, we lived on sound, you know, yeah. We were already initiated by Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, Beatles, whatever. We lived on these songs. So tape recorder was like, that was something. And then I went in a shopping street. This time emerged somebody completely different from the crowd. His name was Yaksha. Big, fat guy, dressed in some kind of dhoti. They had this top, you know, this piece of cloth like this. It was summertime, it was hot. And you could hear very distinctively where they are distributing because they all had this Holland wooden shoes. You know, this shoes, clocks, this wooden. So you could hear that sound, you know, as they walked through the shopping street. So I saw, big yaksha with saffron, you know, with his wooden shoes. But I had no more money. So I ran home and I plucked this tape recorder out of the wall And I ran to the street and found him, and he said, "You want to have it? Take it." And the yaksha looked like, "Well, it's quite useful, why not?" Obviously, it was not all the time. People were giving him such a tape recorder on the street. I remember dancing back. I was so in ecstasy. I was so in bliss, I couldn't sleep. I was so blissful. And I couldn't understand why. I just gave some monk, a tape recorder. And I was in such an ecstasy. I couldn't understand, what is it? Well, Krishna noticed. Yeah, and then 2 months later I was in a temple already chanting and going on Sankirtan. So, these experiences are shared by many, many devotees. Now just imagine you met Prabhupada. I met Yaksha, I met Mali Manjari Devyadasi, that was her name. I met them again when I was in a temple. We were all a few devotees, there. Mali Manjari was fantastic cook. Oh, yeah, she left the body, I think, 6-7 years ago. Where is Yaksha? I have no idea. So, that was my Shiksha Gurus. That was the initiating first contact, to Krishna consciousness. I never forgot this because this is like being born again. This is the new life. So thanks to Prabhupada, we got new life. Before meeting Prabhupada and meeting Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada considered us being dead. He said, consciousness means Krishna consciousness. Not Krishna consciousness means unconsciousness. Why? Well, because you are just moving under the dictation of the three modes of material nature, thinking you are still the master. Nah. The modes will move you around passively. People just live their lives like... And you can ask any older person, was the life as you designed it? Or did things happen as you wanted them to happen? I mean, any honest person will say, no. My life was going completely different direction. I met him and then he cheated me like that and this and that. And this, we don't have a control over our life. Not at all. So that was kind of a little bit known to me. I'm helpless, I'm floating. The Prabhupada called it loitering, just spinning around. So, and I was impressed by devotees. Nobody was confused. Nobody was like, I don't know, maybe I should think about this. Nobody. The devotees look at me and going, Prabhupada ki jai! And everything what they did, you had to quote Prabhupada all the time. Prabhupada said. It was like this. There was such a power coming out of these young people. I was like, oh. He said, and I asked, you have no doubts? They laughed, they were going, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, kill all the doubts. That was the answer I got. I was like, no. I was going, what kind of people are these? Either they are completely mad, fanatics, or they got something which I never saw it before. So that was very intriguing. I said, I have to find out. Why are they so ecstatic? Why are they convinced? And it all led to Prabhupada. And they showed me a picture of Prabhupada. The first picture, I remember, it was Prabhupada. I would like to see that photo again. It's black and white. And that was taken in India somewhere. And Prabhupada sits, black and white. The sun comes from below. You see the veins here, like that. And Prabhupada just looks obviously out of the window. Very majestic. The skin comes, the chin comes out. And I was like, wow. He definitely has no doubts, that's for sure. It was so, It was scary in one sense, but extremely attracting. I was going, I have to check this out. This is amazing. If you want to find out how Krishna consciousness works, try to go out and distribute some books. What I saw happening with devotees trying this one was just miracle. Prabhupada said, there is no such a thing like a miracle. Wonder. He said, this is for fools. He said, everything is happening by Krishna's mercy. We know where things come from. We know that. But what I saw happening to people when they were really tuning into the flow of mercy issuing from Prabhupada was absolutely revolutionary. You know, I already mentioned something. Most of my godbrothers joining at that time, they came either from jail or they were drug addicts. Most of them. Very terroristically inspired. You know. No. They didn't believe anything. There was a generation of people like that, you know. It was foolish, it was helpless also, because they didn't know. They had no alternative, but they knew only one thing. We are not going to surrender to this. So then came Krishna consciousness. And they projected it into Krishna. If you want to really stir up trouble, you show up on a street like a devotee. That was shocking. People were like, wow. They never saw anything like that. So, and we enjoyed it a little bit, yeah. We were all young people, you know. We were like to provoke it. So, but there was more to it, of course. Prabhupada was laughing. He said, they are always quoting me. Prabhupada said, Prabhupada. But I didn't say that. You get nothing done if you couldn't quote Prabhupada. No, nobody will believe you. Nobody will follow you. Nothing. That was the mood. So we find, nowadays I would say, we are a little bit more cultured, okay? But I don't see any reason why I should change that. If you want to discuss something with me, bring something from Prabhupada, some quote. And there's a place for discussion. In a managerial field, Prabhupada, how to apply Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada was giving different instructions according to time, place and circumstances. But he never changed the basis, never changed the essence, never changed the principles. So, this is generally what I believe is, or what it means to follow Srila Prabhupada. But already when we learn to understand, there would be no Krishna consciousness in Slovenia without Prabhupada, sorry. There might be some idea of spiritual life, yeah. Germany was also full of ideas how to cultivate spiritual life. But you would end up with some confused state, meditating something you don't know, but you will feel like you have to be spiritual, yeah. There are people like the wife of John Lennon, Yoko Ono. He was accommodated even in their estate in England. And Yoko said to Prabhupada, Swamiji, we are already meditating. Prabhupada said, about what? She had no answer to that. Oh, we are just meditating. Prabhupada said, about what? Brainless. Just no, we are meditating. It's just a show. It's just an external thing. Prabhupada was very specific. And this is one feature of Srila Prabhupada. He didn't reveal it immediately. Prabhupada was very strategic. He was very diplomatic. To this completely sentimental, confused hippies, Prabhupada was just showing them, I came here to help you. And he showed it in such a beautiful way that he actually created a very deep emotional bond. I will give you now just to illustrate this. This is from 1969, from relatively early stage of ISKCON. Prabhupada writing to his disciples, who the first ones who joined like this. They joined because of Prabhupada. They didn't know much about even India or philosophy or nah. They joined because of him. The bond was so deep and so intense. When you hear the testimonies of the first disciples, it's so intense. There was newspaper published. Hippies like to publish papers, you know. They had this primitive printing presses, and so there was a kind of newspaper. I have it here also, an article from Brahmananda about Swamiji coming. You know, it was like he was like a reporter. Then he walked in a door and he was shining like Buddha. You know, and it was like very intense. When you were close to Prabhupada, there was no way to be passive or neutral. Not possible. It was so intense. People almost stopped breathing, you know. They were like, wow. And Prabhupada didn't do anything. He was not very, no showmanship, you know. Prabhupada was just what he was. Completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. That was so intense to watch. Even we had no idea what it is. But just to watch him being so intense, everything was completely conscious what he did. You know, it was like consciousness on the highest level. When you looked at it, look at you, you were like, whoa, you know. We look like sometimes like we have some plastic bag over our head, you know. But Prabhupada was so intense. And he smiled. And simultaneously, he accommodated us. He was very accommodating. He smiled and he was like, how are you? And people were like melting away, you know. Matajis were completely melting away in front of Prabhupada. He said, this is the ultimate father. This is the ultimate shelter, you know. And some of them, I heard it later on testimonies from my godbrothers, some of them, they fell in love with him. He was in the age of their grandfather. And they were yelling in a lecture. They lost control. Prabhupada, I want to marry you, I love you. Prabhupada had to face this. And Prabhupada was like, sorry, I cannot comply with this request, I'm sannyasi. Next point. And sometimes the girl was obviously on LSD, you know. So he just pointed to Brahmananda, can you get her out, please, you know. And Brahmananda was, Mataji, let's go, you know. You know. So, you know, so Prabhupada had to face this kind of thing. It was a madhouse he was preaching in. You listen to the first recordings of these kirtans when he is chanting. It was long chanting, not much lecture. Just chanting, prasadam. Chanting, prasadam. That's how it started. And hippies loved that. Music, dancing, chanting, great. And everybody brought some instrument. I mean, you can listen to the first recording, it sounds like recorded in hell. One guy was hammering on some pot, another guy hammering on some old piano, you know. And Prabhupada voices, Hare Krišna, Hare Krišna. And then in between Prabhupada goes, sit down. You know, there was another hippie crazy on LSD going, you know. So, you know, so it was mad. Craziness. Nobody knew anything about Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada was preaching, was establishing Krishna consciousness. Sometimes when you read about Prabhupada, the Lamrita and this, there's pictures of Prabhupada. But there are also pictures of his followers. Now, chronologically, look at these photos. There's even film recordings from the first Sunday feast, you know. Somebody recorded. These hippies, you know, stuffing themselves full with prasadam. And then somebody asked, so, why are you here? And he goes, it's fantastic food, you know. And Swamiji is like Buddha. You just look at his faces, you know. You think, oh yeah, that's all LSD, you know. This is all, everybody stoned and flipped out. Not exactly everybody. There were actually some reasonable people coming too, but you don't see much of them. You know, really. The same crazy boy You know, 10, 12 years later, he was an ISKCON guru. Huh? How did that happen? Maybe it's not very polite, I'm saying this, but I will say it because this demonstrates the power of Prabhupada. There's a photo in the early days from Hamburg, the first devotees in Germany. That was taken